Your boots are caked in 3 pounds of red Georgia clay. You have been moving continuously for 4 days, surviving on 2 hours of interrupted sleep and half a meal ready to eat. Every muscle fiber in your back and shoulders is screaming in agonizing, catabolic failure. Directly in front of you stands a massive pyramid of thick, splintered logs rising 40 feet into the humid forest canopy. It is called Jacob's Ladder. You do not have ropes. You do not have a safety harness. You must physically drag your exhausted, shaking body weight up the massive wooden rungs, pull yourself over the apex, and climb back down without falling. If your grip fails, you will drop 40 feet to the hard earth below. But the terrifying reality is that this 40-foot ladder is just one obstacle. There are 24 more massive, brutal wooden structures waiting for you in the woods ahead. You have to defeat every single one of them. I served nearly 20 years in the special operations community. I am not going to name names or list specific operations. A lot of that is in the past and some of it stays there. I came back with this body, some titanium hardware in my spine, and a military disability rating. Now this channel is my job. I share the reality of what it takes to survive in the worst conditions on Earth. I share what I know, you watch. That is the exchange. We have a grueling, physically destructive movement ahead of us today. Today, we are analyzing the physics of pure, unadulterated exhaustion. We are leaving the deep water and the sniper ranges behind to look at the brutal geometry of wood, mud, and gravity. We are traveling to the suffocating pine forests of Fort Moore, Georgia. We are going to deconstruct the most punishing mile of terrain in the United States military. We are going inside the first phase of Army Ranger School to analyze the Darby Queen. To understand the sheer psychological and physical toll of the Darby Queen, you first have to understand the condition of the candidates who face it. Ranger School is not an athletic competition. It is a 61-day leadership crucible designed to completely drain the human body of every ounce of energy, and then force the candidate to lead exhausted men through complex combat patrols. By the time the candidates arrive at Camp Darby for the first phase of training, the instructors, the Ranger Airborne Instructors or RIs, have already initiated the physical breakdown. The candidates have survived the brutal Ranger assessment phase. They have marched for miles carrying heavy rucksacks. They are sleep-deprived. They are operating on a severe caloric deficit. Their bodies are actively cannibalizing muscle tissue just to keep their brains functioning. This is the exact biological state the military wants them in when they step onto the starting line of the Darby Queen. The military does not care how fast a fresh, well-rested athlete can run an obstacle course. They want to know what a soldier will do when their biological armor is completely stripped away. The Darby Queen is a 1-mile obstacle course carved directly into the rugged, hilly terrain of the Georgia woods. It consists of 25 massive, old-school wooden obstacles. These are not the modern, padded obstacles you see on television. They are built from thick, rough-hewn logs, heavy hemp ropes, and rusted steel cables. The course is designed to systematically exhaust every major muscle group in the human body. One of the most devastating obstacles is the Weaver. It is a pyramid structure made of thick wooden beams spaced about 2 feet apart. The candidate must navigate up one side and down the other, but you cannot just climb over it. You have to weave your entire body over one beam and then under the next beam and then over the next. You must do this without ever letting your knees or your elbows touch the wood. The physics of the Weaver are brutal. It requires massive core strength, intense shoulder mobility, and total body coordination. When your muscles are already flooded with lactic acid, forcing your body to undulate like a snake over and under heavy wooden beams causes agonizing, locking cramps in the abdominal wall and the latissimus dorsi. If a candidate's knee touches the wood, the RI walking next to them will calmly order them to drop to the ground, execute a penalty, and start the entire obstacle over again. Then comes the rope drop. The candidates climb a tall wooden tower and must traverse a heavy hemp rope suspended high over a massive pit of muddy, stagnant water. The technique requires the candidate to hang upside down under the rope, using the commando crawl. pulling themselves across hand over hand while locking one leg over the rope. The friction of the thick hemp rope physically burns through the fabric of the uniform and tears the skin off the back of the knee. The forearms, already exhausted from previous climbing obstacles, begin to completely fail. The lactic acid buildup makes it physically impossible to keep the fingers closed. When the grip fails, the candidate falls. They plunge into the muddy water below. The RIs do not yell. They simply record the failure on their clipboards. The candidate must drag themselves out of the mud, soaking wet, adding another 10 pounds of water weight to their uniform, and immediately sprint to the next massive obstacle. The architecture of the Darby Queen exploits gravity as a weapon. Every time a candidate finishes a massive vertical climb, they are forced to immediately sprint down a steep, uneven hill, constantly fighting the deceleration forces that shred the quadriceps and the knee joints. Then, they must sprint back up another steep hill to reach the next obstacle. The course introduces the skyscraper. This is an immense, multi-tiered wooden wall that requires total commitment to scale. As the candidates throw their bodies at the wall, their boots slip on the mud-caked wood. This is where the true evaluation of Ranger School takes place. The RIs are not just timing the candidates, they are watching the mechanics of the squad. If a physically gifted candidate easily scales the skyscraper and immediately sprints away to improve their own individual time, the RIs take note. That candidate is failing the leadership evaluation. Ranger School does not breed lone wolves, it breeds squad leaders. The RIs are looking for the exhausted candidate who pulls himself to the top of the wall, turns around, and reaches his hand back down. They want the candidate who locks his boots into the wood, absorbs the agonizing strain in his lower back, and physically hauls his struggling, cramping teammate over the obstacle. The military utilizes this specific, brutal environment because combat is a team sport played in the mud. If a soldier will not sacrifice their own comfort to help a teammate over a wooden wall in Georgia, they absolutely will not risk their life to drag a wounded teammate out of an ambush in a combat zone. The Darby Queen forces the candidates to realize that their individual strength is irrelevant. The only way to survive the course, and the only way to survive the battlefield, is to surrender the ego and carry the weight of the men beside you. As the mile drags on, the psychological breakdown becomes absolute. The heat and humidity of the forest are suffocating. The air is thick with mosquitoes. The candidates are gasping for breath. Every single obstacle looks like an impossible mountain. They encounter the Tarzan. This requires the candidate to swing from a rope, grab a horizontal wooden beam suspended high in the air, and traverse a series of suspended logs. It demands explosive kinetic energy from a body that has absolutely no energy left to give. Candidates repeatedly fall from the Tarzan, crashing into the dirt, their hands torn open and bleeding. By the time they reach the final obstacles, they are operating purely on raw, unadulterated willpower. The biological machine has completely failed. The prefrontal cortex has to manually command every single muscle fiber to fire. The final sprint to the finish line is a staggering, uncoordinated stumble. The candidates cross the line covered in mud, their uniforms torn, their hands bleeding, and their chests heaving. They collapse into the dirt, staring up at the canopy. They have survived the Darby Queen. They have proven that they will not quit when gravity and exhaustion are actively trying to destroy them. They have proven that they possess the internal fortitude to climb the wall when their body is screaming at them to stay on the ground. The architecture of the Darby Queen applies ruthlessly to the massive, complex obstacle courses you face in your own civilian life. You will likely never have to navigate a 40-foot wooden pyramid on 2 hours of sleep in the Georgia woods. But life is absolutely going to force you onto the Darby Queen. You are going to face periods where you are completely exhausted. You will be emotionally sleep-deprived, financially drained, and physically burned out. You will look at your career, your business, or your family, and you will see a massive, terrifying series of obstacles stretching out into the distance. The natural civilian instinct when faced with this level of friction is to stop at the first wall. They feel the burn in their muscles, they look at the height of the obstacle, and they convince themselves that they cannot climb it. They drop into the mud and they quit. If you quit at the first obstacle, you will never see the finish line. Panic exhausts your emotional reserves in 10 seconds flat. When life forces you onto the obstacle course, you execute the Ranger protocol. First, stop staring at the entire mile. If you stand at the starting line and look at all 25 massive obstacles, the anxiety will crush you. You must compartmentalize the suffering. You look only at the wood directly in front of your face. You focus entirely on the very next rung of the ladder. You navigate the weaver one beam at a time. Second, you must accept the physics of fatigue. You are going to be tired, you are going to fail, you are going to slip off the rope and fall into the mud. When that happens, you do not lie in the mud and feel sorry for yourself. You acknowledge the failure, you drag your heavy, wet body out of the pit, and you attack the obstacle again. Gravity does not care about your excuses, it only respects momentum. Third, you must look at the people running the course with you. In your business or your family, you are not running alone. When you reach the top of a wall, do not just sprint ahead to improve your own standing. Turn around, reach your hand down, absorb the strain, and pull the people behind you over the obstacle. The strength of your organization is dictated entirely by how much pain you are willing to absorb for the team. When you cross the finish line of a massive life crisis, you take one breath. You handle the problem directly in front of you. Then you accept the fact that there will be another obstacle course waiting for you tomorrow. You climb, you survive. You establish a mechanical, emotionless rhythm. You prove that no matter how steep the wall is, you possess the cognitive discipline to override the exhaustion, find the handhold, and pull yourself over the apex. I have climbed those logs. I have felt the terrifying burn of lactic acid in my forearms, forcing my mind to suppress the instinct to let go of the rope. I know the dark, heavy pressure of the Darby Queen. I know the quiet confidence that comes from surviving when your energy is gone. Find the handhold, pull up, breathes. If this video gave you something useful, dropping a like and subscribing is the best way you can respond. It is literally what keeps this channel alive. I will see you at the rally point. Out.